Welcome back to the Corner of Story and Game, a podcast exploring the intricate relationship between storytelling and game design. I'm your host, Gerald Ford, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Marie Bilodeau. Marie is an award-winning author, a tabletop role-playing game writer, and a storyteller based out of Ottawa. Her speculative fiction has won numerous awards and has been translated into multiple languages, reaching global audiences. Her short stories have graced the pages of esteemed anthologies and magazines like Analog Science Fiction and Fact and Amazing Stories, showcasing her talent for weaving captivating narratives. Beyond her writing, Marie is a dynamic storyteller. She has shared personal tales in various venues across Canada, from theaters to festivals. She has a knack for connecting with audiences and winning story slams with her engaging performances. And as the chair of Ottawa's Speculative Fiction Literary Convention, CanCon, she plays a vital role in fostering a vibrant community of writers and readers. Today we're going to dive into a fascinating topic, crafting personal stories for broader audiences. We'll discuss how to draw from personal experiences and make them resonate with a broader audience, providing tips for aspiring writers and storytellers alike. So let's get into it. Marie, thank you for joining me.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. You have poor judgment, but I'm glad to be here.
I'm delighted that you're here. I've taken a bit of a break, and you are the first person to jump back on the mic with me. And we have been going around in circles for probably a year now, trying to line this up. So I'm
Yeah,
excited too.
it's long awaited. So I feel like this is going to be like really, really great or really, really not. Let's find out which one. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing. And you've actually had some work come out in the time that we've been organizing this. So I'm going to leave some space for you to talk about that when we get to it. That'll be fun. And it's been a while since I've had a novelist author on, aside from everything else. So I'm just goosebumps all over the place. This is going to be so much fun. But today, the core topic we're going to talk around, and we'll wander down rabbit holes. But just to have a central topic, I want to talk to you about crafting personal stories for broader audiences, because not only are you an author, you're a storyteller, a well-known Canadian storyteller. So those kind of play together, and that's going to be fun. But before we dig in, I love to get your origin story. How did you fall in love with writing? How did you get to where you are today? Where did Marie come from?
I mean, I think it's kind of like similar to most other creators, right? It's like I've always loved writing and then I always pursued it. I remember when I was a wee little Marie, and just to date myself a bit here, I was sitting, I think, on my brother's bed, and he had like, my dad was in computers. Like we have pictures of him in like the 70s and 60s with the old big machines, right? And I was writing on a TRS-80, if you remember those at all. Like they're just like a command prompt computer, right? No, like there's no Word document, no word processor, but I'm in the command prompt and I'm writing what I think at the time, and my 7-year-old, I believe, brain, this incredible remix of Little Red Riding Hood in French. And I am very excited and I'm writing. And then I get to the end of what I'm sure is a very, very clever, completely the same as every other telling of Little Red Riding Hood, and I hit the enter key because I'd seen my dad do that. But in a command prompt, you hit enter and it all vanishes because it's going like, what? I can't do that. And then I just remember crying. It was my first true betrayal, like my first artistic endeavor and true betrayal by technology. And so I went crying. My dad played the game of, oh, we can probably recover this, and there's no way, but he tried for a while. And yeah, so I started like for a long, long time, and then I eventually, like, I always wanted to get published, right, and write stories and all that, but it's hard getting published. Like, it's not like I got a few short stories out and stuff in literary magazines of all places, like mythic literary retellings. And then I was like, I want to I want to tell stories and I want to really create them. And I discovered storytelling. So this is like oral storytelling. It's like a performing art, right? And the thing I found out about it is I can tell original stories and people are like sitting in front of me. So I can see their reactions right away. And in Canada, at least where I am, in Ottawa area, like most people are too polite to get up and leave even if you bomb. So that's how I ended up in storytelling, which eventually I did continue to pursue publication, and I got published eventually more and more. So yeah.
I remember growing up, there was a local storyteller in my hometown area of Wainwright and Irma who she had some sort of designation in Canada of an official storyteller. Have you ever heard of?
Yeah, there is an official storytellers guild.
Oh, okay.
So there's some like back and forth as to what official storytellers are actually called. Like, when you're recognized by the national organization or your
Right.
local organizations. So there's some differences. Could be a storyteller, a performing storyteller, a professional storyteller, could be a bard. Some people still go by that.
Oh,
So yeah, so there's different designations, but there is a National Storytellers of Canada Guild, which is a great organization.
cool. Interesting. I was just curious. Well, let's talk about the challenge of drawing from personal experiences. Writers and
Mhm.
storytellers really struggle with this. So to kick this off, to start moving things down the road, what advice would you offer out of the gate to somebody trying to incorporate personal stories into their writing?
That's a really good question, and it's a tough one. So it's personal to everyone. But it's a good one. Like what I'd say, like just a few tips and tricks is first of all, make sure you're comfortable with what you're talking about. And not just you, but whoever, if you're incorporating people, whether obviously or less obviously, like from your surrounding, like make sure they're comfortable with it as well.
Right.
Like I usually wait that there's a certain time before I can tell the story if it involves my family per se. Like, when my stepmother died, that was a big, difficult time. And I took me years to be able to craft a story that reflected. And part of it is with a personal story, you have to make sure you don't insult everyone around you. Unless you know what, if you want to like, I'm done with this family, like go at it, like have a good time, don't get sued. But in Canada, a lot harder to do. But one of the fun things about it, or the difficult things about it, is you have to be able to take something that is chaotic, which is life and personal stories, right? And you have to make it feel like a moment in time that people can follow. And that's hard because when you're telling someone like, "Oh, I went to the store the other day. Oh, and I saw so and so. You remember so and so from?" And then you get to a point and you're like, "Wait, what was I talking about again?" We all do it, right? In
Oh
day-to-day
yeah.
conversation, right? So it's that same idea. Like you have to be clear on the thread and you have to decide what to chop off that thread because life is entirely too chaotic to be told in a digestible fashion for anybody else but the people who are stuck listening to our ramblings daily.
That makes complete sense. Um, how do you when you're telling such a personal story, you're drawing a thread from your life or from a life that you've heard you have direct connection with. What's the beginning of the process of making that universally appealing, or at least appealing to a bigger audience than just, your friends who are going to sit and listen regardless?
It's true. And even then, they might not listen.
True. Very true. Yep.
With enough beers, though. But usually it has to be or have some kind of universal appeal, I guess. We've all probably heard here about the archetypes, right? Things that, humanity has a breadth of experience that's similar.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is, I try to have usually one image that is striking because it helps in any story, mind you, it helps ground the reader.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just a season. In Canada, in our, like the Northern Hemisphere, anyways, we talk seasons so much. So if I ground you in a season, if I say, when I stepped out of the hot hospital air into the frigid pre-Christmas cold that nipped inside my throat, and I waited for the call to tell me that she had passed. Like I've already painted a whole story to you. And then from there, I've given you a sensory, something that you probably understand, or given you enough that you can understand it. I've linked it to an emotional piece. Like we're very emotional people. It doesn't have to be crying. It's easier to make people cry than to laugh. Like that
Mhm.
is, it's an unfortunate thing because I think I'm hilarious, but making people cry, like it can be a lot easier. And then yeah, just make it something that everybody can understand. It doesn't mean that your story isn't unique. Of course, stick to what makes your story unique and what you need to tell, but tell it in a way that anybody can understand without the background information. Because a lot of our times with friends and family, we rely on their breadth of knowledge. That's why they're easy to talk to. Because like you
Right.
already know everything about my life. So if I tell you, oh, you know who I saw like in the grocery store the other day, so and so, and then they're like, oh my God, like because they already have the whole story told, like,
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, so make it understandable in a standalone piece. Usually a moment in time. Often it's just a moment in time.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Can you think of an example where you've told a story that's very strong, emotionally resonant, based on a personal experience or a personal story?
I have. I've told a few of them. I love quite a few of them. So one of them, which I actually won story slams with, which is, it's not like it's emotionally resonant, but maybe not in the way. that you would expect. Now, have you ever been betrayed? Have you? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I tell an entire story in three parts. It's a 5 minute story. It's quick, and it is in three parts about underwear betraying you. Um, it's and everybody's been at one point or another betrayed by a pair of underpants. Like it happens. They explode. They don't fit right anymore. They're just,
Yep.
so yeah, so it's a resonant, emotionally resonant because of laughter. I've told other stuff too, like, pets dying or funny stories about going on writing retreats and stuff like that. But you can never go wrong with underpants. Everybody is still 10-year-olds at heart. It is a truth across the world, I think.
Yeah. That's brilliant. It's universal, but it's not one that you would have stopped and thought of. But once you hear it, you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course. I remember bending over and then underwear ripping in half, obviously. Right?
Betrayal. That's what
Right.
that is.
That is.
Betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's good. I like that. Um, Now you work in speculative fiction. How do you take a
Mhm.
personal story, a real world story, and move it into that space?
Now
Is it
that's it. It's hard. And like when I started storytelling, I felt like, okay, I'm gonna get really good at getting people's feedback right away, right? They're right in front of me. So I always thought like if I get really good at reading other people and seeing what they do, then I can just take those stories and put them on the page. But the art of oral storytelling, of course, is completely different from written storytelling, which it
right?
should be. They're different mediums. Um, and for personal storytelling, in speculative fiction, what I love about speculative fiction and why I make it my main playground in writing is that you can take even the gentlest moment in life, and you can put it straight into a story with higher stakes, weird world building or not, and with magic, dragons, or science, space exploration, whatever you want. And you can take a slice of life home story. And then suddenly you've turned it into something speculative fiction. And what informs personally too, because I do think every story has some aspect of our personal in it, right? Something that we've experienced, whether it's an emotion we want to explore more, or a betrayal, or something we think is funny, or just a concept that we want to play with. Like there's always a piece of our interests in a story. Even like social messaging we want to input, like whatever it is, right? So speculative fiction is wide open for that. But what I love about it is I can take something I'm struggling with, like saying goodbye to a friend, and then I can take that into a story about running across an entire continent to try to find that friend again, and then decide how that ending will look. And it is cathartic to me, anyways, in its own way, because I can't do anything about real life, right? I mean, you can't always change reality, but you can address some of your own life inside of story. And spec fic is perfect for that because you can make people don't think they're the dinosaur in the story, So it's a lot easier to get away with stuff.
Right. Y- That makes, yeah, yeah. I like that idea. Um, to get meta, I mentioned rabbit holes, and we're going to wander down
Mhm.
one for a second here. To get kind of meta into it, the ability to tell personal stories and tap into those personal stories, is that something that can be applied to a character, like not just creating a framing device, but actually the ability for a character sitting in a tavern to tell a story that is meaningful to them and has ties to other characters in that world? Is that a skill that you need to learn, how to have uh, the character tell a story that's personal to them inside your story?
I like that. That is very meta. And I like it. There's like layers to that. I mean, I think the one thing, I think that's an exercise that it can be useful to learn it in fiction or to learn it in storytelling outside of it, like either way, because what you have to do is, because in fiction you have to keep people reading, right? It's
Right.
easy for people to put a book down and never pick it up again. So like you have to get good at a targeted story. Like what's the point of the story? Why am I telling it? What are the emotional resonances? Where am I leaving my audience kind of be like and kind of gasping for more, like wanting more information? In person, it's easy to tell because you have like in storytelling, one of the hardest things to embrace are those silences. Like you stop and you don't go too fast. And it feels like if you're like on a big stage, like with spotlights, like at the National Arts Center or something, like it feels like an eternity. But to take the time in the middle of a dramatic story and to just, even if you can't see them, because you can't when you have spotlights on you and you're probably sweating, you look like across and you sweep with your eyes the audience and you hold that silence. That's when they're holding their breath. And in fiction, it's the same way when they tell a story. Because if you have someone, let's say you're meta and you're in a tavern, you don't want to just have them blah, 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 blah. You want to have those, those moments of like describing what's happening, like, like, and you know them as well as I do, like, there wasn't a word, you couldn't hear a sound in the entire tavern or, stuff like that. Like you input those little paragraph bracings as well, those descriptive bracings to give you the silence in the story. And that's so in person, the audience gets a time to digest and get ready for the next moment to anticipate. And it's the same thing in fiction as well. It forces you to clarify your intent as a storyteller. So I like that. That's a fun question.
It just came out of my mind, but now that you've talked about it, it reminds me of Kevin Hearns. Have you read Kevin Hearns' books? The story is told by a bard, and so it's all framed in that space, and he does a great job of breaking it up, just like you say, create spaces and breaks. And
he does, yeah. I was having pie at Kevin Earns last weekend, actually. I'm having good pie memory right now, so thank you for bringing me back there easily with like, yeah, but like that exactly, and Kevin does it well.
Yeah.
Oh.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Thank you
Very
for
cool.
answering that strange out of the blue question.
I love those. Are you kidding? Follow your joy. I will follow along.
Well, I mean, that does open up a side question. What is, and you kind of answered it, but I'm going to dig a little deeper. What
Okay.
are the things you've learned from the art of storytelling, like live storytelling, and the art of writing that is applicable to each other, or you've learned that from one that helped the other, or universal truths?
Ooh, I like that. So definitely the silence.
Mhm.
Like, and that is a hard one. And the speed as well. Like I'm French Canadian, I'm Quebecois. So like my speaking speed is fast. We're fast people. But if you if you don't slow down a bit, they won't be able to follow. So speed silences they are the things that hold your story together. Like they are the moments where the audience get a moment to reflect, and the next thing you say will hit them harder than anything else. Um, and meeting eyes, like, and I think you do it kind of in a way sometimes in fiction too, where you're like, I don't know, where you grab people captive, but I'm not quite sure. I'll have to give that one some thought. That's a good one. Universal truth, though, that's an important one. It's easier to make people cry. I've mentioned that before. And I think it's because when it comes to crying, we have the same touch buttons. Like somebody we love died. That's such an easy one, right? Like an opportunity we really wanted to have missed. Like that's cross-cultural, like human experiences that are shared. But when it comes to laughter, and that's why I was like, even when I think of it, like the underpants, that's still universal because at 10, we all have the same terrible sense of humor, but it becomes cultural, right? Senses of humor become more cultural, more, they're led. Like when I learned English, and I went to university in English, I probably shouldn't have, because wasn't very good at English. And I remember the hardest part was I could not joke in English. Like, and I couldn't tell jokes. I didn't understand jokes. Like there's a huge language barrier, which I don't, which a lot of people don't realize unless they're fluent enough in two languages. There's a huge barrier with wordplay, even puns. Like those are accessible only to one language and an advanced language speaker often too. Um, and so I realized like it comes with storytelling too, because like if I'm telling a story and I'm telling something that just it's making me laugh, like every time I think like some things just make me laugh and they're not usually nice things. I went in real life, but like I was watching this video on YouTube like over and over again. I was having a rough day, but it was like a reporter just talking, and then there was like a pothole behind her covered in water, like one of those sinkholes. And then you can't tell there's a sinkhole, and she's just talking, and she's like, oh, and the streets were running. There's a cyclist that comes. He was fine. It wouldn't be funny otherwise. That comes and just bloop, falls into the sinkhole, and he goes under, like he's under the water. And she just looks straight at the camera, and she's like, another one has gone. I have so many questions with that one statement. He was okay. Everybody was fine. But with just that one statement, anyways. But to me, that's hilarious. To somebody else, it might not be. So in fiction, it's the same thing, right? Making people laugh is very cultural. But if you don't rely so much on clever wordplay or anything like that. And you can, like, if that's your thing, like, by all means, please, like, do what you want. Like, follow your joy always in writing. Nobody's got the answers. But to make people laugh, like, I rely more on actions, movements, misunderstandings, like kind of things that are easier to interpret as funny. Like, I meant to do this and this happened instead, and it is funny. And it's okay to cue the laughter with somebody else in the story laughing, because then they're like, oh, I can laugh. Like in oral storytellers, sometimes I say, like, this is a funny story, you're okay to laugh, you will not be interrupting me, you will be encouraging me, so see it as applause. So, like, you give
Nice.
them permission. And in the story, it's the same way. If somebody else reacts, or even the main character who's just falling down the stairs laughs, then it gives the audience permission to laugh as well, in a weird way.
That's smart. Good piece of
Mhm.
advice. I like
Oh,
that.
thank you.
Where does authenticity play into this? Like, not even if you're telling a story that's based on a real life story, but it's completely
Mm,
fiction, you still need, in my opinion, you still need a thread of authenticity.
yeah, that's a tough one. And there's this moment in any storytelling, like, I think it's fiction or oral storytelling. There's this moment where we go into something that makes us a little bit more uncomfortable, or that elicits a giant emotional response, whether warranted or not, right? And often it's because we're stepping either into territory we probably shouldn't. So, listen to your vibes. They're like, okay, maybe I should back away from this. Or it's about, like, you have touched something that is authentic to you and that makes you vulnerable. Like, for me, and this is just me, like, I'm not quick at processing. I'm quite a slow processor of things. Like, I that's why on social media I don't generally talk about immediate things that are personal, that are especially on the darker side. Like, and I've mentioned this on social media, but, like, my mom has dementia and she's in a home and I'm one of the caretakers, and that's not easy to process. Like, I don't know where I am emotionally. I don't have the time to be authentic with it because I am busy being just supportive, holding space for her. So, like, years from now, that authenticity, that vulnerability will be able to make it into a story. But for now, I know I can't do that. But there's stuff that happened 5 years ago that
Mhm.
I've worked through it. I'm slow. I'm probably slower than most people here. But so I think it's important, but I think you have to do it in such a way that you don't need to take, like, multiple, we all take emotional hits in our lives because the world. And I don't think that you need to necessarily jump into it in a way that will jumble your readers, not in a good way, and then also make you feel kind of like shit because, can I say shit on your podcast? Because I'm
You
just
can
a shit.
say whatever the
Yes.
F you want. Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Stir away.
Right. Yes. But it's the authenticity, and there's a difficult way to define authenticity too, because everyone has their private pieces that they're allowed to keep. And then what I do often is I will let some of my characters mirror some of those parts of me that I just don't know how to work through yet, like, or those experiences. And then it's part of working through it. It's not quite like therapy. Therapy is much more effective, but so yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think it's worth pursuing when you bring it up. Like, I think, whatever messaging you want to put it there, and some people will bleed for their art a lot. I think everybody bleeds to some degree for their art just because it's a lot, but not in a bad way. It's like, the old times when they used to make you bleed a bit just to, like, yeah, like
Oh,
that. I can be freeing, but, like, you have to be aware of your own limits, I guess, is the messaging here. Yeah, because it's important, but to your comfort level.
it sounds like a tricky space to navigate. That's for sure.
Sometimes, yeah, pay attention to your own internal rhythm, like, oh, this is making me sweat with discomfort. Perhaps I will step away or push
Yeah.
through. I mean, hey,
Follow your joy or your pain, I guess sometimes.
exactly, exactly.
Is there Are there other pitfalls or areas that one needs to be concerned or watch for when telling personal stories in fiction?
Um, when you tell there's kind of a freeing vibe about oral storytelling because sometimes I'd be telling a story at a tea shop to like 10 people I don't even know.
Right.
And I would like give more information than I should. And then I'd be like, okay, nobody will probably ever find out. In fiction, especially if even if you like, you self-publish or it's published in like something, chances are it's going to be out there forever. And you don't know who's going to look at it. Like you
Right.
just don't. So I mean, one of the ones is just be aware of who's going to read it, and does it make you uncomfortable to think your boss will read it if it's under your name? Would that make you uncomfortable? So just be aware of navigating that. I have multiple pen names on top of mine, so that's just that's a whole other vibe. But that's one of the ways I've navigated that particular pitfall. And then the other one, honestly, the biggest pitfall is that your life is like everything, everything. You are your world, and what you are trying to give someone is a sliver of something that makes sense. And also, this is really hard to take, or hard to navigate, maybe. You are not necessarily the main character, even in the stories you tell. And so, even if you're telling a personal story, it's okay to do it as a witnessing stand. Like I am the protagonist, but the main character is over there. Like when you differentiate those two in fiction, like you can be the protagonist, so the main character might not be you. You might be a witness, or if you write from that person's point of view, that's not a personal story anymore. That is their story. So just,
Mm,
straddle those lines of point of view accordingly if you're calling it a personal story.
nice. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I like that. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the core stuff before we move into some fun ones to get us out the door. But I do I mean, it's story and game. There's a game side to this whole thing.
Mhm.
So just to pick your brain for a second, because you have worked a little bit on tabletop role-playing games,
I have.
and I have a lot of listeners who work in digital games. So I'm curious, taking
Nice.
what we've talked about here, is there a piece of wisdom? Is there something that could be applicable to game design, be it tabletop or narrative designers in digital space or game writers? Is there something here that can be moved across and is a useful gem for them?
I mean, the one thing, and I think this is why TTRPGs are so popular right now. Like, I'm a huge D&D player as well. Like, I've written a bunch of adventures too. Give people the space to experience things as they need to experience them. I think that's a big one. Give them options. Because, and even like, it doesn't mean, like in the decision tree, if you're, even IDM as well, but you don't need to have it like, oh, but if they say this, they'll go this way. If they do this, they'll go over there. Like I can, like, you can wrap it around to one continuing thing, but give them that space, those bubbles of space, so that they can experience who they want to be, because that will make the game resonate for them, and that will make it even more memorable, and gush about it even more.
I did say we're going to close out the core topic, but that opens up
Yes.
something else I need to talk about really
Oh.
quick. Tabletop role playing, that's also
Mhm.
very near and dear to my heart. I'm also a lifelong DM. And so I have to ask this idea of personal stories,
Mhm.
how does one navigate or does one navigate pulling elements of your personal life into the game without causing bleed, without
Mhm.
having repercussions in the real world because you pull these things in? Is it safe? Is there a good reason to do it?
I mean, those are good questions, and I think it's really a case by case scenario. But I mean, some people, some DMs, and I use them too. There's some tools out there to help you, like with trigger points and stuff like that,
Okay.
right? Like, so, and then those things you take away, and then whenever, like, I try to keep a very open dialogue with my players. So if I'm uncertain at the table, like, oh, I think that topic actually reflects too much what's happening in their lives right now, I'll actually navigate a bit away from it. And then when I get a chance, not during gameplay, not to make them uncomfortable, I'll talk to them individually online or something after and say, hey, we were kind of going into a territory like that. Would it be cathartic, or would it be painful to you? Or is there anything that you would like me to navigate differently? And then, I mean, I know it's not every DM's, my rule at the table is always A, the DM is always right. That's not true. The DM is often wrong, but she's willing to negotiate. But it's also that everybody should be having fun at the table, because that's
Yeah.
why we're all here, right? So, and for some people, they love to dive into, like, if all the players are comfortable with diving into something, great. But otherwise, I try to navigate it gently, especially when something personal, either now or in the past, has happened. Then I try to be a little bit more self-aware of where I'm taking everyone, so that again, we still have fun at the table, because that's why we're there, right?
That's such a healthy, holistic, and collaborative way of approaching it. That's how I run my table as well. But
Yay.
you hear stories, and so it's important to put it out there over and over again, so that the people coming into the game learn, hey, this is not me telling a story and they're playing along with me. We're doing this together.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, that is the end of the core topic. So before we move into the stuff at the end, I have a question that I ask everybody on who comes on the show. If you've listened to an episode, you've probably heard it, but it's your turn. So that question is, in my opinion, there is a magical space at the intersection of obviously story and game, but tabletop role playing and movies and live action and improv and all these things where we all can just get together. There's a shared fellowship, there's a common language. It just happens. If you agree with me, and not everybody does, but if you do, what is the magical thread that holds that space together?
Oh, I think it's okay. This is going to sound corny, but I think it's the willingness for people to let everyone hold space in that space. I think that's the magical ingredient because it's gonna either going to be a shared story we're all telling or it will not be. So that's my two bits, and I like that. I like how you position it.
I like your answer. I've been asking that question for a couple of years now, and I keep getting good, great answers. I'm going to put them all in a book or something at some point. But that
Ooh,
was that
yeah,
was
you should.
fantastic. Yeah, with all my free time.
I know, right?
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Um, we're heading out the door. Before I wrap up, I do like to open up some space. I want to hear what you're working on, have been worked on. What should people check out? Where can they follow you online? Tell me what's happening in your world.
Ah, there's been a lot happening. It's been kind of a little boom period, which I'm very grateful for. Very grateful for. So, I've got quite a few things. I just finished an epic fantasy trilogy called Keepers of a Broken Land, which is the second epic fantasy trilogy I've written. The other one took place 20 years prior to this one and was written 20 years prior too. So, Heirs of a Broken Land. And then I wrote that first series when I was 20 and I wanted to read those characters, strong female characters, not romantasy. They're not getting married because they're fully head over heels in love. It's because they need an army. And then so I wrote those characters. I left an open door. I thought it was going to be a fourth book, and then it turned out it was a whole trilogy that I'm writing 20 years later, bringing my characters 20 years into the future. And now I want to read about kick-ass middle-aged women who still have friendships, all of the difficulties of motherhood, navigating the world, all of that stuff. Anyway, so I have that just came out. I also have Shadowrun. I'm writing for Shadowrun right now. If you don't know Shadowrun, man, it's like
Mm.
perfect for these times too. It's anti-corp, running in the shadows to change the establishment or just to make money. It's like, there's the haves and the have-nots very much. Like it's such an interesting setting. It's like Tolkien meets cyberpunk. Like it's good. It's a fun setting. It's been around since the 90s. And I'm writing for them right now, a rock and roll found family band. And Shadowrunners have to stay kind of hidden in the shadows, not seen. So they're Shadowrunners, but their spotlight is growing because they hit it big as a rock and roll band. Finally, even though they're idiots, they're fun. They're like rock and roll and chaos. So I've got it's called Top Direct, a series. I've got the third book just came out. No, the second book just came out. The third book is going to come out soon. I'm just editing it now. And also another fun project amongst many, but another fun project that was just announced last week is called Dark Reflections Blue Plate Special, and that is book one of a series based on Jeff Lee Johnson's art. And it's a really cool shared world story where we're six authors, including six amazing authors that I loved working with, and we are each writing a point of view. So it's not like I'm not writing a story in this world, we're writing a point of view and building. I've never done any project like this. It's like building DNA with all of our visions and stacking them correctly, and it's insane and beautiful and powerful. And if you like creepy vibes and strange happenings and a good mystery and some really good characters, like this will be a book you'll definitely want to check out. It's coming in November from Rook Creek Press. I remember the publisher, Gomi, and a great publishing house. Check it out. It's up for pre-order now.
Wonderful. I will have the links to all this down in the show
Thank
notes
you.
and the comments and all that stuff. Where can people find you online if we want to follow along?
So I'm on Facebook. I have a page. I am on Instagram. I'm still on the Meta, which I know is evil, but I've got a lot of people there already, so the billionaires won't push me out. I'm on Blue Sky as well. I am not that good at Blue Sky, but I'm working on it, so stick with me. I also have a newsletter. So if you want to get a little dash of chaos every 2 weeks in your inbox, I have a newsletter which you can sign up to at www.mariebilodeau.com. And I also have blog every 2 weeks. So you either get a newsletter or you can check out a blog post every 2 weeks, depending on they're different, but I just like chatting with people. So that's where I'm hanging out nowadays.
Wonderful. And all of those will be down in the links as well. So
Thank
everybody go follow Marie. Well, that is it. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Before I push you out into, I usually say into the cold, but I mean, it's not cold anymore right
No,
now.
it's really hot today.
Us Canadians, we're just used to it being cold all the time. But before I push you out, I'd love to give you the last word of the show. Do you have any parting words of wisdom about craft, about life in general, as you head out the door?
Oh, to synthesize, I guess, which has already been said a few times, is, you know what? Nobody has the answers in this business. Follow your joy. Just do it and follow your joy.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Corner of Story and Game. Thank you to Marie for joining us and sharing your expertise and knowledge into telling personal stories that appeal to broader audiences. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to follow the podcast on your preferred platform, leave a review, comment, like, whatever. And hey, come join us over on Discord and get in on the conversation. Until next time, keep telling stories, playing games, and creating worlds worth getting lost in. Stay safe, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the Corner of Story and Game.